Okay, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. The first thing on our agenda was approving minutes from the last two meetings. I know you sent an email yesterday. I didn't see it. I didn't check email today at all. But if everybody else saw them and is happy with them, I don't know.
To me, they looked fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same.
So I make a motion to approve the minutes from July 17th, September 18th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Great. Okay, all right, so next on the agenda, Patrick is joining us because we wanted to talk about the Department of Transportation Wildlife Crossings pilot program, and we also have David Paulson on with us remotely from Mass DOT. Have you guys met Patrick?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, David's the person you told me to invite.
Yeah, I know. I saw your name in the grant request. Thank you for that.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
So have you all seen this? I seen
Yes.
it around.
Yeah.
First of all, just thank you so much for sort of doing the heavy lift for applying for this pilot wildlife crossing or whatever it is, basically expanded culvert program. I mean, for the public, basically, I think the idea, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but the idea is to basically create an oversized culvert that then allows for use beyond just kind of water flow with more advanced features and the ability for wildlife to actually traverse it and reducing, road strikes and other issues. Maybe you could elaborate on that because I've only read this once.
Yeah, absolutely. So prior to joining MassDOT team, I'm here with Amir Raza from the District 1 office as well, environmental. Prior to joining the MassDOT team, I worked closely within the Natural Heritage Program. So Chris Bulow, Karen Calajo, several practitioners that have been involved with the stewardship of Kampoosa over the years. And the Kampoosa Brook Route 7 culvert, although structurally, it's intact, it's holding its own, is undersized from a hydraulic standpoint. Certainly, it also is prone to, influence of water elevations due to beaver activity, as well as, it's pretty much a pretty narrow constrained site. So it reduces the effectiveness of aquatic and terrestrial passage. So when we were evaluating opportunities to apply for the competitive wildlife crossing pilot program, it's a relatively small pot of money, $350 million over 5 years. Which states can apply for. 60% of the applications have to be in locations considered rural. Thankfully, Stockbridge does fit that definition. So I think it makes it to be a very compelling site on top of all the other values that are there. And, it just seemed like a really straightforward opportunity. We've had issues with flooding in the area, beaver activity primarily, but, while we're out there, while we have a grant with the BIL, with a lot of energy behind climate resiliency and conservation, let's give it our best shot, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so currently MassDOT has submitted that application. I have not heard yet of when we would officially hear back, but fingers crossed. I think we have a very competitive application. We've already started to do some advanced legwork there with the development of a 2D hydraulic model to really understand the flows that run through there, because Kampoosa itself is obviously bounded by the Mass Pike and Route 7, both MassDOT assets. And, from there, the goal, if we're lucky, is to really leverage groups like yourself, Nature Conservancy, Mass Wildlife, and others to figure out what is the best long-term solution to connect wildlife and aquatic systems to the habitat that's there, but also optimize the hydrology so that it is more resilient to whether it's beaver impoundments or flooding. And, with all the various stakeholders involved, it seemed like a really good opportunity to leverage the passion, the ecological importance, and of course the landscape here in the Berkshires.
Great. And so understanding that there may be some other, departments within the Commonwealth that would look at other wildlife crossing applications. And is that your understanding? Are there other applications for Massachusetts crossings being submitted by others? Well, like, basically what I'm asking is what are our chances?
Sure, sure. So the Wildlife Crossing pilot program is a national Federal Highway Administration does the ranking and reviewing. To my knowledge, and one of the requirements of this particular grant is that if you're a local city or town and you decide to apply for it, you have to coordinate with your state DOT. To my knowledge, in my role, and no one has come to us saying, "Hey, we have a great idea. What do you think?" So as far as I know, we're the only one in Massachusetts. In talking with my partners in other New England states, every state except for Rhode Island has put in an application of some form or fashion, different scales. So some are trying to pass, moose under rural roads in Canada, all the way through early project planning efforts in Connecticut. So everything in between is really out there. So I think the number, which obviously isn't insignificant, is relatively, small in the bigger pool of wildlife crossings. $2 million wouldn't go very far if you're looking to connect moose from one side of the road to the other.
Yeah, that's right.
May I ask a question? I'm Laura. I'm the chair. I'm the person that invited you. Nice to meet you. Thank you for being here. So it says that you guys are requesting 2.8 million, but the total project cost would be 3.5. Where would the rest of that funding come from?
Sure. So with any kind of federal program like this, there's some type of state match. And so if we are fortunate to get the grant, the other match would come from state funds that get kind of determined by Mass DOT and the various formula allocations that occur. So there is that, obviously extra cost that would go along with it. But currently the goal would be to have the match from MassDOT, the rest of it, the majority of it being through federal highway.
Okay, thank you.
And I just have one other question. When we talk about, I just want to get the term right. Lake Basin Graminoid Calcareous Fen. It's my understanding that there are very few of those in Massachusetts. And in fact, the one other one that I know of is Agawam Lake or Lake Agawam, which is it anyway, which is also in Stockbridge. Is that your understanding as well?
That is my understanding, yeah. Probably two of the most critically important wetland types in the Commonwealth, definitely globally rare. And that's why there's been so much effort. I'm glad that MassDOT, even before this, was part of the stewardship committee associated with the ACEC. And then, all the efforts to date, whether it's studying the hydrology, studying the plant communities that are there, or the restoration efforts that have occurred to date.
So this is my question. You may or may not be aware, but kind of abutting the Agawam Lake basin is 355 acres that the Stockbridge Muncie Band of Mohicans is purchasing with the help of the Department of Energy's Municipal Vulnerabilities Preparedness Program. And where those are two such rare and sensitive areas, and I believe on the other side of Lake Agawam is Route 7, which is a state highway. It's a kind of the south part, whereas this is kind of north of town, Kampoosa. Do you have any recommendations from a local perspective? I mean, this body was actually convened approximately 30 years ago to help manage Kampoosa because it's so important. And it seems like we kind of have a north area town and a south area town that both have really very similar environmental and just ecological importance. And I guess I'm wondering, do you have any advice kind of locally about, should we be talking about expanding their function to really kind of look at both because they're so similar? I guess I'm just sort of asking how you might recommend we manage those.
I mean, the unique thing about Stockbridge is having these two wetlands here, and they both happen to cross Route 7. So very quickly, the stakeholders that potentially would be involved, whether it's the town or Mass Wildlife, who also owns a portion of Agawam. I mean, to me, I can't speak for the heritage folks, but I think they'd love that collaboration. There's a couple of challenges going on, right? There's, of course, the land protection to preserve what's there. And then there's very much that management element, whether it's structurally, make sure the hydrology is accurate, or, ecologically, because of, just hydrology being altered, or even the incursion of invasive species over time from various sources. Those are some of the biggest stressors. And obviously the systems can't move left or right very much because of where they are. So, I mean, I think the more stakeholders that can come together to be stewards of these two unique resources, I think that says a lot, and I think that's unique to many cities and towns in Massachusetts. To have two like this is pretty fortunate.
Yeah, well, I just want to thank you for giving me the first time in my life the opportunity to say Graminoid, which is now the second time. Yes.
I have a couple comments. So actually that area by Agawam Lake is actually more prone towards flooding, especially of the street than the northern part by Kampoosa Bog. So there's obviously some concerns and challenges there, just even from a public safety standpoint. My second question, it may be a bit early to ask the question, but our stewardship committee for Kampoosa Bog, while it focuses on the ACEC, we're also talking about the folks and the lands that are downstream of that go down the brook towards the Housatonic River. So just trying to understand, like, when work like this takes place on the culvert, how does that impact that brook during the time of construction? That creates at least, because I think what we're mainly concerned about is the continuity of how that flow will work, and it's not going to be these massive shifts in flow, because that's something that has been a problem in the past. For example, when the state has gone in and cleaned the beaver activity in the culvert, that's released a ton of water that goes downstream and has created a considerable amount of erosion all the way down to the Housatonic River. So that I don't know if the question is a bit early in asking that question, but just trying to understand what are the continuity things that are going to be accommodated for to create something that's not going to create too much stress downstream, and then what does the effects of a larger culvert have with respect to the folks that live downstream on that brook?
Yeah, lots of great questions, and my first thought specific to a culvert upsizing would be the 2D hydraulic model is kind of like the next level up in complexity and sophistication compared to this your typical 1D model, which is more common for standard culverts. So I think first understanding if you make adjustments, how does it affect upstream and downstream is absolutely important. Second is this system obviously has beaver influence upstream and downstream of Route 7 on public land, on private land, and ultimately to be good neighbors and stewards, there's going to have to be that local coordination and support to make sure that we don't have impacts downstream or upstream that we're going to ultimately regret. And at the same time, it's hard for MassDOT to operate typically off of right of way that we don't own and control, right? So it's really a system, and I suspect and I'd hope that if this begins to get some steam and we receive the funding, we'd have those local stakeholder interest groups and clear communication for all parties involved to make sure we're doing it right. Because honestly, it's kind of, we want to measure it a bunch of times before we actually make any decision to replace, so we don't regret what we put in ultimately. And it should be something that's resilient and predictable for the future for both the DOT maintenance crews that are out there, but also the adjacent landowners to make sure that they're comfortable with it too.
Thank you.
How does the Stockbridge bylaw that's related to the movement of water, particularly downstream, how does that interact with Mass DOT?
The stormwater bylaw?
Yeah,
Stormwater bylaws, it regulates building activity on steep slopes. I don't think it has much to do with this.
It'd be more the Wetlands Protection Act that would,
Yeah.
that would look at that than the bylaw.
okay, as I understand it from the document, the Wetlands Protection Act has no influence over MassDOT activity, right? They don't have to get any permits.
Yes, they do.
Do you have any comment on that?
They have to come in for permits for any work that they do, so we can comment and regulate that. We can't necessarily prevent it, but we do have input as to how it's done and what we expect them to do in order to preserve and protect the.
Okay.
Yeah, Amir, do you want to speak to kind of your experience locally and, the bridge exemption and kind of how we interact? But before we do that, I think ultimately, whatever design we do here, it's going to be in concert with, stakeholders like yourself, because the goal here is to do the right thing, right? Yes, we want a resilient infrastructure, but really it's connecting the landscape here and making sure it's ecologically and sound and sensitive in nature. So Amir, do you want to talk about the process locally?
Yeah, for permitting, I'm District 1 environmental engineer, and I do handle all these permitting for District 1 projects, in-house projects. And so there are two kinds of permit: Wetland Protection Act. If there is any work which is within any resource area, buffer zone, riverfront area, then we always go to in front of the Conservation Commission for RDA to obtain negative determination or notice of intent. So if it's a bridge project, then bridge project for Mass DOT, those are exempt from Massachusetts Wetland Protection Acts. For bridge projects, we have to go directly to DEP and to Army Corps for water quality certification and for the Army Corps permits.
Okay. So normal.
It is not. It is
Yeah.
very. All the permitting is pretty good.
Okay. Okay. David and Amir, would you guys share your titles with us? Tell me, David, you start. Tell us
Sure.
what your title is.
Sure. So my name is Dave Paulson. I'm the supervisor of the Wildlife and Endangered Species Unit at MassDOT Highway Division. I'm within the Environmental Services section. So I'm based out of Boston, but I work statewide.
Okay. And then Amir, how about you?
So my name is Amir Raza. I am District 1, Mass DOT District 1 environmental engineer.
In Beckett?
Lennox.
Lennox? Oh, Lennox, sorry.
Lennox.
Okay, got it. Oh, yeah.
So District 1
I
office
just drove by it. Yeah.
is in Lennox.
Okay, okay.
Amir has been before us many, many times.
Okay. Is there anything else about this project that you think we need to know that, wasn't included in the paperwork, or anything you want to highlight in particular while we have you?
No, I think ultimately I'm glad that you reached out. I didn't want to put the cart before the horse if we didn't get the grant, but the
Sure.
intention all along was to engage this group as a key stakeholder. And my goal will be to keep yourselves up to date as of the status of this and kind of where we go. And in many ways, even if we don't get the grant and we got to figure out a way to pay for it in the future, having it kind of written up, having hopefully a two-dimensional hydraulic model will hopefully service, not only the MassDOT asset, but the Stockbridge community as a whole. And, you mentioned like the Agawam Lake Route 7 culvert or bridge. I'm not quite sure the size of the span there. That's great on my radar. And Amir, if anything comes up maintenance wise there in the future, just let me know. I'm happy to help and, to see what makes sense in that location. But just wanted to really bring this to attention. We're really excited about it. I know leadership's excited about it. We were asked what we were doing, and the fact that we chose Kampoosa Bog as a place to really put our first application into the BIL relative to wildlife is very exciting. And if it doesn't make it this round, hopefully next round. So happy to answer a question you have, but also be available in the future. So
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just looking at the timeline that was part of the document. So survey and hydraulic modeling ongoing to April 24, and then public outreach May 24 to November 26, and then with eventually construction July 2026 to September 2027. So I guess the public outreach part, I know you said you don't know, you're not sure when they're going to come back and say you're approved or you're only partially approved or whatever.
Spring, right?
But did I misunderstand you?
Oh yeah, so we don't. I haven't seen a announcement date for this grant. I was, obviously hoping for the new federal fiscal year. We're now in it. I mean, I'm hoping that by the end of hopefully December I'm cautiously optimistic. And that schedule that was in the application was kind of, if we were to, propose something based on where we are today, that's where we would be. Certainly that could get adjusted, probably forward or back, probably more so back and forward, depending on when they announce and kind of the process they are rolling out funds. But yeah, hopefully soon we'll be able to come back with good news and talk about next steps. And certainly once the hydraulic modeling is done, we can kind of re-engage and give everyone an update where that stands, just so people know what the data looks like. And
That would be neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we would really appreciate that.
And a couple of us were at a conference with Quentin Palfrey, who's in charge of the federal grants.
Okay.
He suggested that it was a spring, go or no go. From
Okay,
bids.
okay,
So
okay, cool,
it's imminent, wait the winter.
great. Okay.
Give or take a few.
Does anybody have any other questions? Thank you so- Oh, yeah.
From Dave. Dave, it is considered culvert now. What do you think after replacement? It will remain as a culvert, or they may be categorized as a bridge then?
So great question, Amir. And for everyone else, you're like, well, what's the difference? In Massachusetts, if it's over a 10-foot span, so if it spans over a brook 10 feet or greater, even though it may look like a culvert to you and everybody else, it's actually considered a bridge. And what that means is that it just goes through a additional review of bridge engineering through MassDOT called Chapter 85 Bridge Review. So we don't know. It's currently 4 feet. And so for it to span greater than 10, obviously we get a little bit of room there. I think the hydrology will really dictate it. And also too, where it sits at the road profile, you really couldn't put like a 8-foot tall structure because there's no room. You have to bring a lot of fill there. So we're talking probably a structure that is maybe a little bit higher, a little bit longer, natural substrate. Whether that's a single structure or two structures, I think the modeling will kind of give us those scenarios, which then the designers can say, hey, based on the hydraulics, we think here's a couple alternatives to consider to achieve your goals. So.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
My favorite part is the wildlife benches.
Yes, absolutely. Well, what's really exciting about that, and I know it's not necessarily related to all that we do at MassDOT, but in my section, when we have a culvert or bridge being replaced, one of the specs that we build in is not a standard, but becoming very common practice is using the natural stream bed material, so matching conditions upstream and downstream of the structure, and ultimately a lot of these structures are being built wider to meet or exceed crossing standards, and with that incorporating natural bank and the wildlife bench. So that way it's flood resiliency, it's wildlife connectivity, it's aquatic connectivity, all in one design. And the number of sites has been growing since about 2008, and it's exciting to see it become kind of best practice and get baked into mass stream crossing standards too.
Right. One last question. We heard that you think Stockbridge has the coolest endangered species in the whole state. Is that true?
I do. I believe that. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
excellent. So we're going to call you in our local newsletter from that perspective.
It's official.
Have a good one. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Appreciate it. That was neat, right? Cool. Okay. All right. So
Just to tie that up.
Yeah.
I do think that this question of Agawam is one that you're doing so much great work and learning so much great stuff about a really rare ecosystem. And we have two of them. And yet the mission of this is sort of one of the two. And I don't have any opinions on this. It was just an idea I had driving over here. But, I'll leave that up to you.
What's one more? What's one more?
What's one more? Yeah, twice the fun. But the work, the underlying knowledge is all kind of applies to both.
Yep, for
I think we can get them to fund two giant, bench style culverts for animals on both ends of town, on the north side and
Yeah, I
south
don't think
side.
there actually is a culvert on the south side, is there?
Let's build one.
There is.
There is a culvert there?
Gotta be this water.
Must be ridiculously.
Water is the same height. It's too
small.
Yeah, okay. I don't even, where would it go? I mean, how much?
And I heard that if that thing at the Mason Library in Great Barrington fails, we may get a Du Bois statue for under there at the bench, for on the bench. Wait, that's it.
Thanks,
On
man.
that note.
Yeah.
There hasn't been as much study on Agawam
Right.
that I'm aware of.
Right.
In terms of what's there and endangered species and and that kind of thing. I mean, obviously Kampoosa's been at it for a long time. with
Yeah, and I
bunch of
mean,
different people
the
telling-
origin of the Kampoosa committee, why was it just Kampoosa, not, I mean, I know that they're not, continuous,
Because
right?
of the ACEC.
The ACEC.
Designation of the ACEC
Right.
was the thing that triggered so much of the studies that were done. And also because they were trying to influence the Mass Pike.
Right.
Sure, okay, that makes sense.
And there was also there's far more stakeholders with respect to Kampoosa than Agawam, because, late 90s, the state took that over. And
Right,
so being able to have some oversight over the state on Agawam would not be a bad thing in my mind.
There's also the Mass Wildlife property across the road.
yeah,
True,
The
true,
pink farm.
sure. But I mostly concern myself lately.
Yeah, I know, but what I'm
Right.
saying is
Sure.
they have, they have interest on both sides of the road. So maybe that would
Yeah,
spur them to be more
But
interested.
I would just add that with our friends coming back to the Fen Farm parcel, that this is yet another touch point where we
Sure.
have, folks working together and, and help get them up to speed on some of the issues. Just.
No, I agree.
Stakeholder.
I don't disagree. I agree, yeah.
I mean, the Fen Farm having been in private hands for so long, I don't know that there was an impetus on the part of the Swan family to have people messing around back there. So I think it's kind of a whole different world
Sure.
now.
Yeah, no, I agree.
what's the Swan family part, is
The
that,
Swan family is a family that well, still currently owns Fen Farm until it
Oh,
closes.
okay.
But they're,
got
I
it,
think most of their interests were self-serving rather than broader.
okay. So Fen Farm, Swan family, same thing?
Correct.
Okay,
Why does Fen Farm, are there two ends in Fen?
Because there's the-
Basin Fen, it's Fen.
One of the first owners of the property was Fen.
So a guy named Fen with two ends owned a Fen with one end,
Yes,
with one end.
correct.
what are the chances?
Yes. And he had a 121 acre farm on that property.
Yeah,
So,
Fen.
and actually he gave it to his son, who then managed it for a while. So
Okay, when is that all supposed to close?
it's actually on the Swans right now
Okay, all right,
to fix that.
Got
To
it.
get that all buttoned up.
okay, so we don't have to
The Stockbridge Mountains community is ready to go.
Okay, okay. All right, so the next thing was to finalize the mission statements and objectives. I meant to print out copies. I didn't. I emailed it to all of you guys. Ooh, somebody brought theirs. What?
When did you do that?
I emailed it out when I emailed the agenda. It was just below it.
I missed it, yeah.
October 9th.
Yeah, so it was like, here's the agenda, and then underneath that was, here's where we last were with the mission
Okay.
statement. It's the same one that I've sent out
Okay.
multiple times.
So maybe read it one more time first.
Okay, it's a long one. All right, so to remind you guys of the vision, it was typo, oh God, that makes me nuts. Actually, that's not the right. All right, I'm gonna skip the vision because I don't think I have the latest one with me. Mission. Yeah, maybe I do need that.
That's yours.
Sorry, okay. So the final vision statement was to preserve, protect, and restore the Fen by fostering community support and stewardship of the Kampoosa Bog drainage basin, ACEC, and environs, while preventing further deterioration to the flora, fauna, water, and environment. And then our draft mission statement, last time we talked about this, which was, I don't know, June maybe, was through the union of stakeholders, we will facilitate communication and resource sharing between core partners, educate the public, define baseline environmental data. I struggled with that part, I'm just saying. I was like, I'm not sure how we're defining baseline environmental data, but this was what was in the previous incarnation of this committee. This was their mission statement. Coordinate cultural and environmental research communicate research results and communicate activities, review and comment on proposed developments, all in order to restore and preserve, protect and restore, I said restore twice, all in order to restore, preserve, and protect the bog. So that, when we were working with the big whiteboard, that's sort of where we landed before. The only difference really from the 1999 mission is they did not have facilitate communication and resource sharing. We thought that was important.
Yeah, that seems a lot of what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they did have coordinate cultural and environmental research, communicate research results and communicate activities, review and comment on proposed developments, all in order to restore, preserve, and protect the bog.
Can you just go back to the baseline thing? Because it seems like what you're saying there is just effectively, we're part of our work is this coordination of information. So we're not necessarily, unless we are the stakeholders who are going to be continuing to establish the baseline of what that is.
Mm-hmm.
But it might be that it's part of our coordinated efforts across all of the different constituents to ensure that information is
Right.
maintained.
Right, that's true.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have defined baseline environmental data. So maybe it's, I don't know, coordinate people defining baseline environmental data.
Well, because it's like, that's something that, BNRC can work on, so can the state. So it's like they're all going to have like their own different things. And it's
Right.
part of our, I think, being the clearinghouse
Yep,
is our ability, is what we need to do is be able to provide all of that information and then trying to create, and this is where our challenge might be, is creating that consensus around what the actual
right,
authentic information is.
yep,
So, because, one would think and hope that we're all going to be close on what our baselines are, but
Yeah.
the state might have different standards than BNRC, than anybody else. So we just have to work through that. And do we have the capacity to be able to do that?
well, I guess that's my question. I think that I struggle with the word define.
Would you say manage?
Coordinate,
I was going to say coordinate. Yeah.
Yeah. Or just add that into all of our coordination. The aforementioned coordination that we're doing.
right. Facilitating communication and resource sharing between core partners, educate the public, coordinate baseline environmental data.
Sure, sounds great.
Thank you. Glad that you were organized, since I wasn't organized. Wait, you take that. Oh, yeah, okay. So then we also have a bunch of objectives and goals underneath that. I don't know if, it's a lot. I feel like our objectives and goals could change as time goes by, depending on what's actually happening in the FEN, but we have the objectives and goals are more like specific to what we say in the mission. So it's educate the public is in the mission, but we're talking about in the goals, it's on the importance and unique qualities of the bog. We talked about updating the existing management plan, which is from 1997 or 99. I don't remember which. Investigate the need for a contingency response plan. That's what they had on the 1999 list. Review and comment on proposed developments which could impact the bog. Serve as a clearinghouse for information. We added that one. Identify funding needs, secure monetary and other resources to satisfy those needs. We talked about a newsletter. That was a long time ago. But somebody threw it out, so I put it on here. And encourage and support the following: environmental research, preservation of the overall environmental quality, control and eradication of invasive vegetative species, study of historic and archaeological resources, preservation and appreciation of landowners' rights. Those were
It's a lot.
where we were last time. It's a lot. Yeah.
Do you think it would make sense, to me, we could easily approve our mission and our.
And our vision.
And our vision, get that out of the way. And then it feels like part of our work is to create the prioritization of these things.
Agree.
And to develop like what would appear to be like a multi-year plan to say, what's our priorities? What do we need to do in year 1, 2,
Yeah,
3?
yeah. Like we
Not-
talked a couple
Not that any
weeks ago.
state or municipal entities can do that, but let's just try to.
Right. Well, a
Establish
couple of
that.
weeks ago, we said, water quality and invasive species. Those are the two things that we feel are like the most important things that we need to try to tackle.
I have another suggestion also. It's one of the things that we did when we were talking about Lily Pond and the surrounding area was to identify what's there. Do we
A survey
actually
of
And that's what we
know?
said at the last meeting, that before we can manage invasives, we have many invasives.
But not even just invasives, although obviously that's.
But everything, I mean, it
Everything.
could be
Survey.
ash trees and they're all dying,
Well, But
Yeah.
what do we actually have there that is special? What are the endangered species that,
Would that be accomplished through a baseline?
I would think we should do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a botanical survey would presumably include
But there are also critters.
everything that's there.
Yeah.
But I mean, that would be one survey. Presumably, whoever does a botanical survey would not be the same people doing an animal survey, right?
Yeah.
But a baseline will cover a lot of things. It will tell you, where the water sources are, it'll tell you a baseline survey of like what you have in there for flora, fauna, what have you. You need that. I mean, like anytime you do a conservation restriction, you need that information so that you can draft your conservation restriction accordingly. So you do get a lot of that up front. You may need to go back and do further investigation if you want to get a complete.
So we
Right.
have reached out, I've reached out a couple of times, you've reached out. We don't get a response. When we've asked for the people that have that information, to give information to us. Patrick.
There's a reason for that. It's that these plants are so globally rare that plant hunters will come and look for them.
Well,
And I think that that they don't want to map exactly the locations. And as a town, we have to be very careful because the work product of this group is public information. And it's not necessarily so with Heritage or the other endangered species managers at the state level. And I just, just make sure that I think there's a listing, you can just get the endangered species list for the town and it generally lists what these are, but I think
we have the list, but we also know that there's nonprofit organizations that have been documenting these things. I mean, I feel like you sent us something, it was from, used to be New England Wildflower Society.
I
it was
did.
you,
Lisa.
I did.
Native Plant Trust, but
Because I'm a
yeah.
volunteer and I have access to that.
Oh.
But I have asked them to give us more and they, I mean, there's no response.
Some of the surveys are from the 90s. I mean, it's not even current.
It's one of those things where we don't really want to provide too much because, a lot of people think the potted plant look great in their house, let's go dig one up. And,
Yeah, no, we understand that. And that, I think that maybe is where some of the hesitation has come from. We've certainly gotten some things where they're like, we're not going to send you this, but we'll send you that. I think, and then we had our photographs taken, with the drone, but I don't know how close you can zoom in and identify stuff there.
Not that.
Not that much, unless we got closer.
Yeah.
But the ACEC is big. I mean,
Huge.
when you take the whole thing in, it's big. So if you say such and such a plant, or I know I think I've said that my cousin was one of the foremost experts on moths and dragonflies in Massachusetts. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us. But I went out with her in a canoe one time, and she was like freaking out because there were all these things that she had anywhere else in the state. But just because they would exist perhaps somewhere in the ACEC does not necessarily place them in a place where
Right.
people could. And frankly, you can't really go out on the bog because it has private access on all borders pretty much.
I know. One thing I thought that was interesting in this Mass DOT is like one of the very last sentences in the whole thing. Canoeing, kayaking, fishing, and hunting are allowed in Kampoosa, and a risk is to be sure that the project maintains or improves these uses. And I was like,
How is that possible?
It's possible on the Mass Wildlife land.
oh, I
That's
see.
where it's possible.
Okay, okay.
You know,
Provided it's not within certain distance from a residence.
right.
Right.
But it's certainly not going to be happening on the Marion's property. It's
No.
not legal on the Marion's property, but it is on Mass Wildlife.
So back to your point, I think that's vital, that we figure out how to get a survey of what's there.
Well, you can obviously survey all the stuff you need to be monitoring you know what I mean? Like, we kind of need to get a good sense and pulse of like, what are the things that we need to address? And having a baseline and to know that information is a good starting point. We don't necessarily need it to be getting into the minutia or into the weeds of you know, where all the vital things are
Yeah.
you know, with a map that.
I don't need
X
the
marks
coordinates
yeah.
of like the purple pitcher plant or
Yeah.
whatever, but
But I mean, having a good sense of what we have to work with or know what we have to do, I think is a really an important starting point.
I know we have an endangered sedge, which I wouldn't know if I stepped on it, which I would, of course, try not to do, but you know, that's part of the ACEC. And
Right.
when we had our forest management plan, they were very specific about where they could not go.
Right.
Forest management.
Right.
So things are known in terms of, they have polygons and stuff
Right.
of where things are. And with the polygons doesn't say, you know, it's right in front of Arthur. You know?
right. Patrick?
I just wanted, my suggestion, have a third section besides vision and mission, which is background, and they've already written it for you. In line 6 on page 2, it says Kampoosa Bog is a system of carries wetlands. That's the end of the paragraph. It's like 3 long sentences. It justifies all this work. And I think it's really important that folks understand, you know, that if we're going to talk about vision and mission, that the justification of the background, I think, is an equally important kind of point to make is sort of, you know, maybe add a third section in the kind of top level, which is background. And he's written it for you, or whoever wrote this.
Well, I think they pulled it from the ACEC.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It sounds exactly like that.
Yeah.
Good.
So, I mean, just getting back to the
Yeah, objectives and goals.
the objectives, my sense is that we may need more info to
Yeah.
kind of figure out what our priorities are. But like that could be something that we could plan out over multiple years.
I think so too.
And maybe establish some critical first step ones that will help us get to the other ones.
Yeah,
So-
like mini goals that
Right.
maybe move on to bigger goals.
Right.
Because, I mean, just having the vision and the mission, I think at least helps us have a conversation when we're reaching out to people with what we're trying to
And we can
accomplish.
take it off the agenda.
Yeah.
It's been on the agenda for a year. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Okay. All right. So I will write this up. I'll email it out to everybody again, just so we have it. Does anybody have anything else on that?
So we want to make a plan at our next meeting to make a motion to approve our mission.
Oh, no. Oh,
I feel like we've done that three
I'm glad you
times
tell
in
me
a
about the
row.
motion. I forget about
Yeah.
the motion stuff. No, I think that we could approve it
we could approve
now.
I feel like we could approve it now. I really don't want
Yeah.
to wait another month.
I forgot about the
Yeah.
motion part. I was just like, it's
I'd like
approved,
to get
let's
to
move on.
I'd like to get to the baseline.
No, I know, Robert's rules.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
So I'll make a motion to approve the mission statement and the objectives,
Nope, the vision.
Nope.
I'm sorry, the visions, as they currently are determined.
the vision and the mission.
I
Okay.
second.
As you've mentioned them.
Yes.
So,
Well, I
yeah.
think we did approve the vision last.
We did.
time. Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Okay, so all in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously.
Great.
Great. Oh, thanks, guys. Okay. So next on our agenda, Lisa, you had wanted me to add the Stockbridge Library archive storage. Good
Okay,
news,
so,
potentially.
yeah, potential good news. I went into the library and I spoke with Talia, who's the assistant archivist, and asked her whether it would be possible for us to store initially hard copies and eventually electronic copies of all the information we're collecting. And I think I sent you her response. She's amenable. She wanted to know, how much material we're talking about. And she agreed it would start with the hard copies and eventually be electronic, but she said that's more than just scanning things in. You really have to index and prioritize and make them accessible. But I thought it was, I mean, I think it's a great place for them to be unless everything goes to the Concom offices, which is also a possibility. But I think it's a better place for things to be so that people who are just interested in the bog can.
We're running out of space.
Well, I think they are in the library
We
also.
are running out of space with this. We have one more year in the current file cabinet, and then we have to add in another one.
Okay.
Well, we're clearing out, digitizing all the land trusts, so you can take our file cabinet.
Yeah, no, apparently
Okay.
the police have one.
Okay.
We have
We have a fairly large one.
We have an assortment of really sort of funky file, some were new, but some of them have been since, the old town hall, so they're not quite as good looking as some others.
Well, we may be able to get things out of the Concom office and into the library for some of that.
I mean, she agreed to 2 boxes, right?
Yeah, to start.
Boxes we can do.
Yeah, which are like, those legal, or, right, those lawyer sort of boxes.
I mean, we could definitely fit a 3-drawer file cabinet as, one of the little ones in there somewhere.
But even looking at this report and seeing Smith College is doing research, Mass is doing research, I think there's so much going on that we don't
have
know.
no idea.
And it's really valuable information.
So if we get the research from Smith or UMass, I'm just trying to understand the logic here.
Yeah.
Are we asking them for a hard copy or can we get the?
I think going forward, we should ask for everything electronically.
Okay, all right.
That would be my.
When you said that the library was looking for physical stuff first and then digital after that, I was like, but we're not gonna.
Well, because the point is, we know we have a lot of physical stuff right now.
Right, no, right.
Yeah, where
But
it's not.
there's a lot of stuff we
digitized,
don't have and I just want to make sure that
No, I
that's
would
digital.
Going
Yeah.
forward.
Okay, all right. Okay.
There's also a whole, Patrick, you can tell me if I'm getting this wrong, but when we first moved here from the old town hall, everything got dumped in the storage area that's downstairs. It's a big room. And I think that a lot of things have been taken out of there. I went through and took out all the conservation stuff and put it in our offices. And I don't know, I think the police have storage there. I know all the really old records from the beginnings of the town are there behind the screen, fenced in area. I think there may well be room down there.
But we want something that people can access, that, they can
We
call the
were trying to
library.
make it publicly
That would
accessible.
probably be possible. And it would not be possible in the conservation office.
Right, so I
Okay.
think that's why I'm thinking the library is.
Yeah,
And they have a small file already, so it's not going to be new, which is.
Is that all this photocopied stuff that you
I
showed?
took some of that, yeah, I mean, I photocopied some.
Not a lot,
yeah,
but they
yeah,
had,
yeah.
they had some. So, I mean, down the line, I think it'd be great if we had an intern that could organize, scan, prioritize. Not immediate, but I think it's a potential nice job for somebody.
Okay.
Does the library have I don't know this and I should know this, but does the library have the capacity to scan that's something other than like a Xerox machine? Like, do they have like the tools, like the Athenaeum has a tool that,
What's it called? I can ask them.
I don't know, I have to, I'll get back to you, but it's
So
like,
it's not your usual.
it scans and it does OCR, so it does optical character, and then
I
it,
doubt that very much.
yeah, I don't think the library has that, but like the Athenaeum has something like that. So maybe something we might want to talk to the library about, in the sense that when we do get to the point where we might want to digitize this stuff, to see if we could partner with them. There's a number of libraries, like Boston Public Library does it as well, and a few others, where you can engage them and give them boxes and they'll scan it all, and then you get stuff back that is indexed, and then it's OCR, so it's all indexed. All the text is captured and then indexed in a database.
And another library would do that for free?
No, but you can usually find ways to find them, and they'll do it for us. And then there are ways where we could apply for various grants to have that stuff digitized.
We still don't have.
Mass Humanities would be a starting point.
Okay. We still don't have any place to keep any digital files though, just I'm reminding all of us.
Well, that's a question we need to ask, the select board to figure out how we do that.
Yeah.
Because the library wasn't going to give us a facility for any digital archive, were they?
Eventually.
Eventually.
It sounded like, from Talia, and I don't want to speak for her, but it sounded like eventually she thought
Like,
that was the way.
that's where they're
Okay.
going
Yeah,
with all
that's-
their stuff?
Yeah, that was where she would want it to go.
Okay,
But that's an eventual, that's not
right,
Okay,
immediate.
okay.
okay, all right.
So do we agree that that's a good place for it to go?
I think so. That's what we had talked about.
It's a good starting
in the
point,
last meeting,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so I'll
I
get
think it
back to
makes a
her.
lot more sense.
Do we need to make a motion that we approve?
I mean, so we get things from different people. Do we, if we're putting it in an archive that anybody can access, do we need to check with the sources before we make things available you know what I mean? It's like people have shared things with us, but does that give us the right to share it with anybody?
I would think so, but we haven't asked, I guess we should ask. I mean, but why would you think someone would object to?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we've seen all kinds of hesitancy just to share something with us that's, science,
Yeah.
I've only
so
seen
I
that
don't know.
around endangered species. I haven't seen it around other things. I don't know what others' experience is.
No, but I think you make a good point, because.
I mean, yeah, like the stuff that I have from BNRC, most of that's stuff, the private correspondence, no, that's not in public record. But like everything else, which is about 90% of it, is all
Yeah.
stuff you'd find in the registry of deeds
Okay.
and stuff like that. So I don't know that that's,
And a lot of it too is the minutes from the previous commission, and I think that's public record.
Yes,
Yeah.
that
Which is
yeah.
public record, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, things.
And then
from
all the
us,
state stuff.
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's a good question.
I guess that's something to think about before we put anything in there, if there's
Right.
something,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, when I went through the folder that I have, which is now downstairs in the conservation office from my mother, there was some, I realized when I looked at it the second time that maybe there was stuff in there that I didn't want to be public knowledge.
I see.
I got that back to you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't publish.
And I
it.
pulled some of the information
Okay, good.
out of it.
Yeah,
And I
good.
thought, I don't know if that's something that,
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Do I have to move that if we can?
We probably need to make some sort of a formal thing to say that we're going to put the stuff in, we're going to work with the library to keep our records. And then at least our hard copy records until
what
we,
kind of, there's also what kind of responsibility do they have for it then? If there are documents that go missing, shall we say, or something like that.
Well, I know
what is
when
their
I tried to
responsibility?
access, I couldn't leave. They gave me the folder there and I had to
Right.
sit there
Right.
and they actually kept an eye on me. It felt like, but I couldn't take it home. They gave me the folder and someone was in the room with me and I was.
you can take pictures, because I've done that at the library, but I couldn't take
Exactly.
anything with
So
it.
you bring your phone in
Right.
and all of a sudden you have, access.
I think we should maybe consider,
Getting a file cabinet in this room over here
Yeah,
or downstairs.
I don't like that. I don't like that. I think it's so hard to get to. It's so hard. I mean, I really think part of our mission.
There's the funny little room that's behind the copy room.
well, that's where the Stockbridge Land Trust
Yeah.
stuff is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think the historic commission,
yeah, I mean, we could at least put two boxes worth of stuff into that file cabinet for now.
So when someone calls, who do they call? And
Well, that's the question, because and
how do
someone.
they get in and can't they also walk out with what?
Well, it's much easier to walk out with
Yeah.
stuff there, yeah.
I do think that's
If
the
you-
mission of the library.
I think Sally's point is like, do we want to just put everything in there, public and private stuff? And if we have the private stuff, what's the rules around access to that private information?
So then I would propose at this point, we put the public stuff in the library and allow public access to it. I think that's important to have
Does
people be able to.
Does
have
the
access.
town already have a policy or a statement about files and access to files?
I don't know.
I mean, that would
No
be
idea.
a starting point, or can anybody go in, take them out, even though it may be private?
But what makes the library stuff different than the stuff that's downstairs in the locked unit? Right? That's a different whole, I mean, they could be the same documents or they could be different documents, but both the town and the library have different set of standards with respect to access.
When we moved from the old town hall to the new town hall, my criteria for where my office was gonna be was that the door was gonna be locked. Because things disappeared
Yeah,
from the
yeah.
old town hall.
Yeah.
My office was the kitchen.
Absolutely.
And, you know, you're required by law to keep the notices of intent forever. I mean, I'm sure that 3/4 of the stuff that's down there could get pitched. But I don't pitch it because every once in a while, something will come up that we have to research. And obviously they have keys upstairs, but people don't go in that office unless it's.
But the same is true, I mean, for the archives in the library, you can't get in there unless they let you in.
Yeah.
And then they have to find the material for you. So I feel like it's pretty safe. I don't.
I mean,
No.
one other requirement we could do is just, which I don't know how practical, it doesn't seem very practical, is that whatever we put in the library, there's at least some digitized version of it that sits somewhere, so that if it does get pinched, there's still a digitized version of it somewhere that we could get to somehow, but that means you gotta scan it, and you have to have it somewhere. And then, but
We don't have
we
the
haven't figured
somewhere.
out where the somewhere
have
is
the
and stuff like that, so.
I don't think that we need to worry about it being pinched. I think my concern is more about like the privacy concerns that you brought up. And I would really like us to avoid having the same thing in multiple places. That seems silly.
Sure.
Right now, we're just trying to get our hands on anything we can possibly find. But
I'm
we're
totally-
also eventually going to be generating things that need to
Yeah.
go to a place as well. So that's what has, I like the library. I think it makes sense. I think what we're working on is scientific and it would be nice if it's researchable and, easy for people to discover. If some
So they're not
grad
doing what
student
we
from
have to
Smith
do.
wants to look into purple pitcher plants, they can go there or whatever. But
Right.
obviously private correspondence is,
I mean, the challenge is depending on what the private correspondence is, because like all the stuff that I have from BNRC, that's in, I don't know, part of me feels like that's in some ways part of the public,
domain already, like,
well, at least between BNRC people, like not necessarily with the private but entities, but most of them were just conversations around giving up their properties to give to BNRC or the Nature Conservancy or whatever. So at that point, is it really that a big deal to make that available? Because, I don't know. I guess what I would say is like, let's at least get the stuff that we feel we feel confident is public domain, so to speak. So it might have, like, obviously, if it came from a public source, and then it can go in there as a public source.
And then I would suggest going forward, any documents we get, we can say, is it okay if this goes into the library?
Right,
yeah.
I mean, I should think that the minutes would be
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
great.
it's a
Yeah.
place to start. And I think they have that already. They have that now.
Okay, so then I'm gonna move that when we're ready, we put our records, either records we found or our future public records into the Stockbridge Library archives for storage, as long as it doesn't exceed 2 boxes,
With an eventual plan to.
with
scan
eventually
and
going to
digitize.
digital.
But how big boxes? Yeah, she
I know,
didn't say.
right?
She didn't say how big boxes.
I would just say regular box pack,
Regular boxes.
those Iron Mountain boxes.
Yeah, right.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. Thank you for looking into that. Okay, the next meetings, this is just a reminder, we already discussed November 20th and December 18th. I was wrong. Sally pointed out to me that I was wrong about MLK Day in January. It is the third Thursday in January, so that means sometimes when we move our meeting out by a week, then we end up squeezing the following, so I just want to look and see what that would be. So we originally talked about January 15th, which, I mean, it clearly shows it in my phone. I don't know why I didn't think it. So it would be January 22nd, which is the fourth, there's actually 5 Mondays in that month of January. So that would be the fourth Monday of the month. And then we would have another meeting 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks later on the 19th of February. So the 19th of February is President's Day. So we would have a meeting 5 weeks later on the 26th of February, which would put us 3 weeks away from the following meeting. So, okay, so January 22nd,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay? Great. And then it would be February 26th, which is the fourth. Yeah, okay. All right, I will reserve the room.
I just want to say that for November 20th,
Yeah, it's Thanksgiving week.
I know, and when I said yes before, that was before I knew that someone was planning a special thing for me that week, so I don't know if I'll be around.
Well, we'll still have a quorum if, I'm assuming by then you've got snow, so maybe you're not chopping down trees anymore. Okay. Does anybody have anything else?
I did get in touch with the Nature Conservancy. I didn't hear back from Rennie Wendell, but I heard back from his colleague, who is the Watershed Conservation Manager. Her first name is Angela, and I'm not going to abuse her last name by mispronouncing it. And she has tentatively put the November meeting on her calendar.
Oh, great.
I'm going to send her the agenda and the Zoom link and everything in hopes that she'll be able to make it. She's not 100% that she'll be able to. She did send me, because I had asked her about surveys that TNC had done and whether they were doing, other kinds of water quality studies and this kind of thing. She sent me something from October 2002, Geochemical Study Design of Kampoosa Bog by Amy Rhodes, who had also done, from Smith College, who had done the salt thing. And I can send everybody that electronically. If anybody wants it in hard copy, I can photocopy it tonight after the meeting.
So does that mean they're not actively doing anything at Kampoosa right now?
Well,
2002 is a long time ago.
yeah, I know. Well, she was a little vague about it. So the equipment, the water monitoring equipment that I think you said came from UMass, I think was these people, the Smith College people.
Yeah, okay.
And
was a long time
Angela
ago.
doesn't know if there's still monitoring going on. I mean, the stations are still there, but she doesn't actually know the status.
Yeah, the stations are definitely there.
Yeah. So, but one important thing that she did say was that they do not have the staff for doing surveys. She said
Okay, that's
they
good to
could make
know.
recommendations of consultants, but they just don't have the staff. They have done some in-house invasive monitoring as well as some other botanical surveys, but she's not sure that they have any kind of final report that's easily shareable.
Okay.
So, I think I've asked you before, but would CPA fund a survey? If we could get it together is that something CPA would fund?
I think we talked about that last time.
I
Yeah.
don't know if we talked about a survey specifically.
We talked
It
about
was-
invasive.
It was a survey that CPC could fund up to 5,000, but it
Right.
has to be related to a particular property question or something, that it's
exactly.
not.
Yeah, it has to inform the
Yeah.
committee about something in order to
Tell
make
us-
it fundable.
What's there?
Well,
Isn't
I
that
don't
enough
know
of-
that we can do it that way.
Okay.
It would
So
have
we-
to be, if you were applying for some sort of, it would have to be, would be open space.
Right.
There were
You
an
said
open space grant that you wanted from CPA, and somehow the survey would inform the committee about that open space.
So could
Then
it,
I think it could possibly be made to fit.
So what, could it inform the committee about the need for invasive removal? If we ask for a survey to see what's there?
Possibly.
Because, I mean, to me, that's the dire issue, that the invasive.
Except the problem with Kampoosa in that regard is that it's not readily open to the public, and that's a big deal.
So how
It's
does
not a
that,
park or whatever.
Well, that CPC requires it to be, have some public component to it, right?
Yeah,
for MVP,
yeah. MVP might be.
MVP
Right.
might be, and I think the other problem is just finding some organization that really wants to go in there and do it, because it's such an unfriendly place.
When you say some organization, like the actual survey
Yeah, who
work?
would do it?
Well, I don't know if I share this, the
Yeah.
Conservation Works under Northampton would probably, would jump on that.
DEP has grants too. Remember, we got that grant for the bowl
Yeah.
9 years ago. Right, also, think about DEP.
Yeah,
DEP grants. So it's a place we might want to just ask Dave some questions, about how to get this going. Because I feel like we need the survey before we can do any work.
I know, we
And I
think
don't-
we know we have a problem. I mean,
Yeah.
you can see phragmites when you're driving on the road, but beyond that,
We don't really
how,
know.
how deep do they go?
yeah,
And-
these folks are really thorough, so,
Yeah,
Conservation Works.
You think we could invite them to a meeting and
Sure.
talk to them?
Sure.
And see, if they could give us any.
They won't necessarily give us a quote, but I mean, like, they could tell you what they're gonna do and what they can
Yeah.
include.
how they would do it.
Yeah.
Invite them to a meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll talk to her.
Yeah, okay.
To then, but you won't.
But
get the
that
next-
presumably would help very much in terms, if we wanted to apply for a grant, in
Yeah.
articulating exactly what
Yeah,
we
Yeah.
wanted from it.
Yeah.
So that would be helpful.
So if you're not at the next meeting.
Well, can you invite?
well,
try to
I'll get it all coordinated and I'll,
Get it to the December
Yeah, get it
meeting,
to the December.
which is also
Yeah.
12/18.
yeah.
Okay, okay. All right, so that would be December agenda. So for the next agenda, Louise, I'll put Nature Conservancy on there, and then you can let me know.
Yep.
Okay,
Great.
if I should keep
Thank
it on there or
you. I would
not.
love it.
Okay. Anything else?
We have members of the
Okay, ready
public
for
here.
public comment.
Public comment.
Should we talk from here or the podium or what?
I'm fine if you talk from, are you good?
Just move along.
Okay, sure, sure.
Chairs right here.
You wouldn't mind just introducing?
Absolutely, absolutely, of course. We're Stephanie and David Adler. We live on, at 7 Lee Road here in Stockbridge. We sit within the EC.
Oh, okay.
And we wanted to let you know what was going on in our little neighborhood up there. So our neighbor at 9 Lee Road is Berkshire Gas. So our house is the white house that you'll see if you're going from Route 7 towards Suburban on the left-hand side. Built a beautiful timber frame barn out front. It's a nice burgundy color. Immediately to the east is the Osterman Gas Company, which is, they're actually leasing the property in the back from Berkshire Gas. There's a driveway, which we've all driven by a million times and had probably never given it a second thought. Back in 1972, a permit was pulled to put a 30,000 gallon tank up there, a propane tank. It's what's called a mounded tank. It's not actually underground, it's actually mounded. The purpose for that gas facility in the back there was it's called, I don't know if anybody knows anything about this or not, but it's a peak shaving plant. So there's a line that runs just to the north of my property, on their property, and it runs down to the gas line. It used to be Tenneco, now it's Kinder Morgan. I'm sure we're all familiar with them. And they, back in 1972, they received a permit from the town of Stockbridge for a 30,000 gallon mounted, with the possibility of, in the future, requesting 2 additional tanks. In the early 80s, 1982, they got permission to put 2 more buried 30,000 gallon tanks up there. The purpose was they were pulling the gas off of the line and they were storing it in there. And then Berkshire Gas would come in with their smaller trucks and they would load up on their propane, and that's how it would get to John, Jane, Q Public out there in the world with their propane tanks. which we didn't have an issue with per se, until about 5-6 weeks ago. The fire chief went up there to talk to Berkshire Gas and took a look around and found hundreds of tanks up there sitting within the ACEC on the property. They ended up pulling out 276 tanks, propane tanks out of the property of all different sizes. Some of them were 50 gallons, some of them were over 1,000 gallons. Took 7 tractor trailer loads to pull them all out of there.
Were they empty?
No, they were not empty. They were full of propane and different, some of them were fuller than
They were
others.
variously full, not full. They were tanks that were reclaimed from people's homes.
Yep.
Or businesses and brought there, and they were supposed to be emptied. But they had not been emptied, most of them, and so they were just variously filled.
And
these were-
I'm sorry.
They were buried or
No,
somewhat buried, they just piled?
There is a buried tank.
Storage of.
Right, there is a buried tank as well, but so for the 30 years we lived there, we had assumed that there were inspections that were going on by the state Environmental Protection Agency, which I reached out to, never inspected the area. Fire chiefs, fire chiefs, nobody ever did an inspection up there as far as safety was concerned. This is coming to light now because fortunately when the fire chief was up there, he looked around and went, this is out of my purview. So we had the state fire marshal come in. You know, as far as his knowledge base, this is a bit outside of his knowledge base. So we had the state fire marshal come in and they started looking around and realized that there was some serious issues out there.
Sure.
I'm questioning, and this is something that the select board and we're gonna all have to figure out, but I wanted, as far as the legality of the actual, on those huge tanks that are there, I'm not too sure that they're being used appropriately to the original permits. That's neither here nor there for your body though. They have asked for additional permitting, which is the select board is gonna hear the November 9th. That permitting is gonna include a 500 gallon methanol tank up there. So it's not just gonna be propane, it's now gonna have methanol up there as well. Propane, as most of us know, is mostly a gaseous form. The methanol is used to go ahead and when they want to offload these huge tanks into the smaller tanks, it's very cold. And so they need the methanol to go ahead and make sure that the valves don't freeze on the trucks. Now, the original purpose, like I said, was to shave off the gas off the line, off the Tenneco line. They don't do that currently anymore. Well, Berkshire Gas owns the entire property. About 20 years ago, they sold it to, started leasing it to Osterman. And about 18 months ago, somebody bought it named Superior Plus. So Superior Plus now has the lease on the big tanks that are in there. They don't shave off the line anymore. So they're just using it as a depot. So 18 wheelers come into the property, they drop off their load into the huge 30,000 gallon tanks, and then they use the smaller trucks to leave. Problem is, those trucks that they're using were not permitted. The 500 gallon methanol tank was not permitted.
And that is a liquid.
That's a liquid substance. All of the other tanks that were back there were never permitted. So the only thing that is permitted is just the 30,000 gallon tanks. And I'm questioning whether they're actually using them in accordance with the original permit because they're not using the line off the Tenneco line anymore. So they have completely changed what they're doing back there. We had no idea. I mean, we are just absolutely shocked. I mean, it's just heartbroken. You know, we felt like, there were inspections being done, never happened. Questioned the fire chief as far as the safety of those huge tanks because they've been there since the 70s. He said, we think the state's been inspecting them. I said, that's clearly not acceptable to us. We need to find out if they've been inspected. But this all sits within the ACEC. So this should be a concern for everybody. I mean, even though the propane is not a liquid form, God forbid if anything were to happen there, the fallout from that would be, almost catastrophic. I mean, so it's pretty scary back there. Now, we're getting to a better place. The select board's gonna have to obviously address all the permitting as far as that's concerned. The fire stuff is obviously being handled by the fire chief we're going through that as well. But we wanted to bring the environmental concerns or the possible environmental concerns to your body because we thought it was important.
They currently have 4 of the delivery trucks parked up there at all times. They're looking to permit those plus another, so a total of 5. So those trucks,
diesel
trucks of good size are parked up there at all times. At some point within the last couple of years, they paved the area, and since then, our neighbor Jim McDonald
Lives to the west of
lives to the west and more toward, as you go toward the bog, he's a little bit more in that direction. He reports that water now runs off of there and over his driveway and just really makes a mess of
Runs
it.
right by his well and
Should
everything.
come to the Conservation Commission.
We've already put him in touch with Ron Broker, and he's done water tests as far as his well is concerned.
But also just because what we can do if something has happened like that, it's been paved when it's been unpermitted, that we can go back and look at if it maybe wasn't a jurisdictional issue in the first place, but it is causing difficulty into a resource area.
Yep.
We can retro make them fix it.
I don't think there's been any permits. This is, we're just really peeling back the onion here. And I think, I don't want to speak for the town, but, you know, the town administrator.
But if they
we're all
paved-
very, very shocked by this.
If they paved and created an impervious surface, which then creates runoff that goes into a resource area, and there was no permit to begin with, we can go back and issue an enforcement order to make them fix it, at least to the point where it's not draining into the resource area.
Then the other thing too is it goes to the, and that property sits on the lee border. So there
I
is,
was, when you were done, I was gonna say, is the whole property in Stockbridge or some of it?
so the entire Berkshire Gas property is only in Stockbridge.
Okay.
The abutters, and by the way, we're not here just for ourselves. We speak on behalf of all the abutters. We've had numerous meetings.
Okay.
So we'll be meeting in group in mass at the select board meeting, but it's not just the Adlers that are here.
Yeah.
We've also talked to the Keenans who live at 900 Stockbridge Road in Lee. They're very concerned. They have a pond on their property. They're reaching out to their conservation commission over in Lee as well. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's.
Can I, so you indicated that, who's supervising? I just want to understand this so that so you indicated that there were a lot of propane tanks that were there
Yep.
illegally.
Yep.
Who removed them and who was supervising that removal?
So the gas company removed them. Superior Plus removed them.
Plus.
So they had been there for 18 months.
Yeah.
They came, we had a very brief, few minutes in front of the select board, and their representative basically said, you know, they're doing the best they can to get them out of there. I would just say that they were there for 18 months and nothing happened getting the tanks out until the fire chief found out what was there. And then within 2 weeks, they were gone.
But was there any entity outside of the gas company supervising that removal? So there's no inventory of what was removed and no inventory condition report on any of those tanks to know if any of those were compromised in any way?
Not that we know.
Not their own. There's one 800-gallon tank that is buried up there. That tank is actually, so I don't know if you know this or not, but natural gas and propane have no smell. It is added, and it's called mercury.
Mercaptan.
Mercaptan.
Yeah.
And so it's literally a drop of mercaptan is extremely powerful smell. And so they have a tank there, which I believe is empty. And so they made a commitment to the fire chief, I don't know if that's his purview or not, to go ahead and have it removed. But there was never gas in there. And I don't know how dangerous that stuff is as far as environmental. I do not know.
So we have, it's, your onion peel is really opening up a very potentially
Yes.
bad picture. I mean, we obviously knew that it was a bad scene, but just the fact that the removal of tanks wasn't supervised by anyone, and so we have no clue.
How big is the property at 9 Lee Road?
I'm guessing that the property that is fenced is probably an acre.
Okay.
But this is just a guess.
Usable area.
Right, but
I mean, I can just go to the registry and
absolutely.
look it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I have it right here, as a matter of fact. I have their plan, but I'm not too sure if it has their acreage on there or not.
You may have said this, but is DEP involved?
So I did reach out to the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Agency. I don't know if
Yep.
that's the same thing. And they said that, I reached out to they have multiple divisions there. I started with the buried tanks division. And he said, well, we look it up here, we see that plant has been closed now for 20 years. And I said, well, I'm here to tell you it's never been closed because we've lived there for 30 years. he said, well, we'll get an inspection up there. Now, their office is not in Western Massachusetts, as we know. So they will come up here when they have other inspections to do in the Berkshires, but I think their office is
DEP
closer
has
to
a
us.
Western Mass
I think it's-
office in Springfield.
In Springfield, that's what I mean. I just mean as far as, I think
yeah.
Western Mass is named the Berkshires.
So, but DEP,
Yes.
I would not ignore the DEP either. Our representative is a circuit rider named Mark Stinson,
Okay,
and I would alert him.
Yep,
Okay.
definitely.
okay.
I mean, remediation comes to mind.
Yeah,
Well, yes, for me too.
Yeah.
yeah.
This may be above the Concom's pay grade at this point.
But
I
like, you know, obviously beyond all this, then you need to have, you know, it's gonna be like, I'm just thinking about like my experience with Fen Farm and the fact that, you know, that was owned by the Swan family for so long that we strongly encouraged to the point of forcing, you know, the Stockbridge Monson community to get an EIR, which is an environmental impact report, like a stage 2 or phase 2 report, because that tells you like all that's happened there and know what's in the, I'm assuming that's going to be something that the town or somebody's going to have to like, and if not, then we'll have a few people there to make sure that that happens, because we can't just, you know, I'm just hearing what you're saying and I'm already like, I'm not going to trust
I
anybody.
mean, I'm pleased to hear that it might
So-
only be an acre.
Yeah.
Because if you had said it's 47 acres or something, I'd be like, oh, you know,
Right.
but.
I don't think anybody in this body knew anything about this any more than we knew anything about
No.
this.
Sure.
So,
The only thing I knew was going to your house and saying, what the hell's that noise? And you're just like, that's the gas company.
Right.
That was the only thing, yeah.
we're really very upset about it.
So the 9th is a select board meeting. They're going to be looking at the permit from Berkshire Gas.
Correct.
For,
For
It's- I can tell you-
Superior Plus propane.
Right.
Superior
So what
Plus.
they're
Because
looking
Berkshire Gas
for-
Oh,
owns the property.
What they're looking
Okay.
for is storage of 600 gallons of methanol, 26,640 gallons of LP gas in above ground containers. That's going to be 5 3,200 gallon delivery trucks. And they want 72 120 gallon tanks as well up there. And that's what they're looking for. And 90,000 gallons stored in the underground containers in 3 30,000 gallon tanks.
isn't it?
Are they,
Total aggregate is 114,640 gallons sits within your ACEC.
Hard to wrap your head around it.
But how close is it specifically to a resource area?
I don't know that answer.
I mean, is
I don't
there water, for lack of a?
Oh, I
Yeah,
understand.
the pond,
So it sits above, the pond that's a.
Heron pond.
Heron pond and
It sits
Wallace.
above that.
And the Heron Pond folks know about this?
Oh, yes.
They are butters.
We are here on
So we've
their,
been
yes, on their
meeting
behalf as well.
Okay, so Heron Pond is part of a network of waterways kind of that goes through there. So that is, so the impact on a resource area is very likely huge,
Yes.
to say nothing of health and safety for the folks at Heron Pond and the other abutters.
Yes.
and doesn't that drain though too into
I thought it drains into-
Kampoosa and into the brook and all that
The
stuff?
brook and then into the river.
Yeah,
and is there a
my
disaster?
house.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ned?
Is there a disaster plan that they bring?
So back in 1972,
Question.
they were required to have a disaster plan. Where that sits today, I have no idea.
I would think that would be important for them to bring to the select.
Yes, they were also supposed to have, there was a lot of promises that were made at the meetings in 72 and the 80s. They're supposed to be having, fire departments are supposed to be up there doing drills. They're supposed to be tied into the different stations, the fire stations. There was a lot of things that were supposed to happen.
So whatever was supposed to happen, they should be presenting to the select
Oh,
for all of this
yeah.
to be approved.
I just want to make sure, so this is Berkshire Gas is coming forward with these permits?
So it's actually Berkshire Gas, but it's
With Kinder Morgan?
Superior Plus
Superior Plus.
And how's Superior Plus
Propane company that
is leasing
leases.
it.
from Kinder
From
Morgan?
Berkshire Gas, who
So
owns-
if you were to look at the property up there, there's a very small part which is fenced off just for Berkshire Gas. It's just the head that goes to the main line. That's theirs.
And a very small building.
Very small building, and you can tell if you ever went up there, you can see the newer chain link fence. That's very important for security reasons, that it's all fenced in the way it is. The entire rest of the property is what is being leased now by Superior Plus. So.
Leased by Superior.
Leased by Superior from Berkshire Gas. If you actually look, if you were to pull the.
The deed is in Berkshire Gas's name. Okay.
So the line is Kinder Morgan?
Correct.
Yes.
But, okay, all right.
And there's going to be some weird federal stuff in there too, I'm sure.
Well, and it would be zoned residential as
It is
well.
on residential.
Okay, so it's grandfathered in,
Correct.
even though it's industrial use.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Patrick?
Having seen the results of an explosion when they were building the pipeline through our property,
Oh, yeah.
and it sent boulders the size of this room, 50 feet in the air, I
It's all-
can
mean,
tell you,
a-
it's not a good thing.
Among everything else, it's a security risk for the town.
Absolutely.
Absolutely it is.
Public health.
So
Yes.
Patrick wants to say something.
I really can't say anything other than, because I'm a set of the board that is going to
Yes.
consider permit, but I will say that I think it would be entirely appropriate to both the members of the Conservation Commission who are here and the Kampoosa Bog Stewardship Commission, if you have any recommended conditions that should be considered as we consider whether or not a special permit isn't a yes or no necessarily, it's well, no is pretty absolute, right?
Yes,
is-
but.
Yes can be conditioned.
Yes.
And so if you have opinions, November 9th isn't that far away, but you've got a little time to consider any recommendations on that.
So
Well, I mean,
coming to the commission before November 9th? We can't, we have to operate as a commission.
I'm going to be out of town next week, but Stephanie's
We're
going
acting in
to.
real time, like you are, I'm just saying.
Okay.
Did they have to come? I'm trying to think why they would have to come to the Concom. If they're going to be doing, I think it would depend to some degree on what kind of work they were doing and the proximity. If they're within 200 feet of a resource area, then they should theoretically require a permit from the Concom.
I guess,
Our feeling is that we would rather this just,
Go
but I guess my,
so we don't want, we prefer the no option than the.
Historically,
I mean, it feels like it's,
bad actors, and we're not feeling like we're full of trust.
I feel like that it's not a improbable course of action to simply say, before any new permits are ever granted, that a full history of what has happened is documented. Because why would we trust an entity to adhere to any permits that we grant if they weren't actually followed to begin with?
The previous one.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So,
Right.
I mean, it's like,
Even today, when we look out back, so the fire chief's going to do an inspection later this week. They're not in compliance of his requests. So we'll see how that goes.
can I ask a question to Patrick?
Man, I answer, for sure.
Okay. I mean, there could be a stay pending a public review, like being able to walk the property and see what's going on.
You can continue a public hearing, or you can act, and this is likely a vote of the majority.
If other bodies, and again, I would need to know just how close it is to a resource area. But if there were other bodies that should be consulted for this work, would that be grounds for continuance?
Yeah. As long as the majority of the select board agree with that.
I don't know, some special permits require a supermajority, which is 3, like, I don't know if this is a 2-1 or a 3-0 for approval.
I asked Michael, his feeling was that it was a simple majority.
So 2 people have to vote for it.
People have to vote for this.
And I don't know, like this just to me, like I've been to enough select board meetings where like they stay up thing because someone wants to build a deck, and they need to consult the Concom and all this other stuff. So to me, it feels like there could be at least a stay,
This is a
Like-
big deal, but that'll be up to our town fathers and mothers to decide.
No, I know, but this seems a lot more severe that one would think that they could
Building a
be
deck,
easily
yeah.
stay, the fee.
That's why I'm asking, at least for the Concom, it's really important to know whether what is happening is within 200 feet of a resource area.
Yeah, because then it's within your jurisdiction.
200 feet of
Of a
wall.
resource area.
Resource area being defined as a body of water, a brook,
Yep.
Yeah,
something like that.
I couldn't speak to that.
An aquifer.
Up there and walk the land, I don't have an answer.
Not within 200 visible feet from
Sorry?
what we see.
Stormwater bylaw too.
The stormwater bylaw would be a disturbance of over 10,000 square feet. So,
She's almost 2 miles.
so theoretically, if they've already done that by creating an impervious surface that's now creating stormwater runoff, then they've done, but that was under planning board at that time. Now it's under Concom.
I think what we need to do is have some conversations with a different number of entities here to ensure that this is, being a clearinghouse, we can do that.
And reach out to Mark Stinson from DEP too.
Okay.
Have him take a look.
Yes, we'll take it.
It's STINSON.
SON, DEP, and that's in, he's out of Springfield.
It's out of Springfield. And Mark loves nothing better than to go back over Mass GIS maps.
So he can tell you if it's in the resource area.
I will commit that I'll talk to entities that I can talk to, like Berkshire Natural Resources Council, all these folks who could help us with providing us with some insights to the questions that you're asking so that we can try to get that stuff done sooner rather than later.
I think if nothing else, there are a lot of questions that.
I feel like a huge
Feel as
thing,
though
which
it's
is,
a Pandora's box, and,
Which is
we're
completely
just trying to
true.
bring it to the attention of whatever entities we feel like need to know.
We're not the subject matter experts.
I'm just concerned that it's an industrial use in the middle of a residential area too, which is not within our purview, but that's,
So
I
probably.
know, that's.
But I
Also,
would,
just to let you know, now that they're not tapping off the line, they can do their depot wherever they want to do their depot.
Oh, okay.
It could be in Great Barrington, it could be in Housatonic, it could be in the industrial park. Those huge tanks, they're not tapping off the line anymore. So they could literally put those
Just
in 10 bucks.
storing them.
It's
I would-
just storage.
I would also strongly recommend that our next meeting is October 24th. I think it's the
Concom.
fourth
Yes,
Tuesday
definitely
Concom.
that's that.
Okay.
I would definitely come. We listen to the public at the beginning of the meeting. So 7 o'clock,
Okay,
either via Zoom or here.
So is she on the agenda?
okay.
Well, it's public.
No, I know, but
It's informal, so
no, but I'm saying if you can
it
get
can
us,
be on the agenda
if you
for
can
sure.
get us any documents
Yeah.
that we could look at, that would be really.
So the 72 and the 81 permits have been pulled. I would suggest starting there. You could ask town administrator for those. Those are the documents I think you want to start looking at. That'd be my suggestion.
For our,
That's how,
But they're ones that you bring to us. We are reactive rather than proactive.
Okay, that's fine.
and, I mean, what we would need to know is the distance to the resource area, so.
Okay.
you know, map-
That I'll work on getting that. I'll get that.
Yeah,
can we have those documents on email? We can forward them to
Yes.
you? Does that work?
Yep.
Yes.
Could you send that to me too?
Yep.
Thank you. That would,
So it's Conservation Commission, all one word, at Stockbridge-ma.gov.
That's Stockbridge dash
ma.gov.
gov, and also to Rich.
yes. The question, so you pulled the permits, but do you have anything in writing with respect to the various entities who have never done any of these inspections or any of that stuff?
Check with the fire chief. There are no inspections out there.
With the fire chief and then the state fire marshal?
No inspections.
Do we have that documented anywhere? Like, was that just,
Fire chief foreman. he's-
was that just was that verbally communicated to you? That wasn't
No
electronically?
inspections.
But the fire chief said that to you
Correct, verbally.
verbally?
That is
Okay.
correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
and you can
Well,
ask them to.
the former
provide
fire
the
chief is
instructions
on the select
when you don't have them.
So there's,
Statement.
he might know.
Whoever to
Right.
provide the instructions, and they'll say we don't have it.
Yep.
And I would also suggest that you get the response from the fire chief and the fire marshal in email.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would definitely.
Oh, in writing.
Anybody that you've talked to that has said, we don't have that, we having that like in writing somewhere
Okay.
would be useful.
Okay. We'll do that.
Okay, thank you for bringing this.
And I'm happy to help.
Okay.
I don't want it to feel like this is all on you.
No, that's all right, we got this.
I'm going to try to go to that select board meeting.
Yeah, me too.
Too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank
you.
Any questions?
Anybody have anything else?
I think that's it for us.
That was,
That explains your text.
Thank
that was pretty exciting.
Does anybody have anything else?
Any questions?
Okay.
No, is this gentleman here? Did you?
No?
I first met David and Stephanie when after running by their house, I saw flames shooting 30 feet up in the air.
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness.
And
So.
I had no idea what.
Was that the gas I'm hoping and not your house? Okay.
What they did is that when Superior came in, they realized that the pipes off the tanks, off the big huge tanks needed to be replaced. So they had to actually empty the gas out of the huge tanks. They set up a tripod and the flame was about 50 or 60 feet in the air. It was unbelievable. It was so much that people were walking down the street, driving down the street. They came to our house, banged on the door and asked if everything was okay.
Oh, my gosh.
The fire chief never alerted us. He said, I knew about it. And he said, I apologize. I should have let you know.
Well.
I did not. So, and I accept his apology.
Okay.
It was what it was, but it was scary. I was out of town. My
Yeah.
group takes me out of town all the time, most of the time. And Stephanie was home alone and it was really scary. It was like a rocket was going off.
Yeah.
And it was
It's like when they burn the oil off in the oil fields.
it was huge.
Yes.
It was
Yeah, something
huge.
like that.
Yes.
What time is the select board meeting, Patrick? Is it 6:30?
6:30, yes.
Thank you. So I don't have to look that up.
Also, it's probably important to note that while they are asking for all of this to be permitted officially, it's already happening and it has been for a very long
Oh, yeah.
time. They already have all of that. They
Right,
have
they're already
that.
using the methanol tank.
Methanol
back there.
tank
The
is
truck's already
being
back
used
there.
for-
They have all these other
As
tanks
long
back
as they,
there.
There's no cease and desist right now.
Well, we'll see how it goes at the inspection later this week.
Okay.
And then we'll see.
Okay.
The
But they've had-
initial items that the fire chief gave them, like
A week or 2 weeks.
cleaning the
That was-
tanks
get the
out and
tanks out.
various other things, those were, okay, you need to do that within, it was a week or two, or there'll be a cease and desist. So they took care of that right away, and then there was a continuance for the rest of the items on his list to October 20.
Okay.
So
Correct.
then he
That's
will
the
re-inspect
inspection.
on the
Right.
20th.
And then after that, the town will issue a cease and desist.
Got it. Okay. All right. So if we don't have anything else, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. We don't have to vote on that, do we?
No, you just got
Okay.
to
Did you,
make a move.
sorry, did you?
I'm moving that we adjourn the meeting. All in favor?
Second.
Oh, wait.
Sorry.
Did you want to say anything else? No, you were just here to
Yeah.
attend?
Yeah, to listen to it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right, good.
He's been to one of our meetings before.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
He's on the front.
concerned neighbor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, that just really pissed me off.
I'm not.